Good afternoon, everybody. Great to see you. Happy new Rotary year. I hope the year's all started off well for each of you and you're all fired up with enthusiasm for another great year of Rotary. Lovely to see so many familiar faces on the call, lots of smiles. That's what I like to see. So we've got a very nice program lined up for you today. I'm supposed to formally welcome you to the Zone 3334 Zoomformation call, the first of these calls for this Rotary year. So consider yourselves formally welcomed. And without further ado, it's my great pleasure to introduce our cameo speaker, none other than, drum roll, drum roll, drum roll, past Rotary International Director, Stephanie Urchick. Stephanie doesn't need much introduction. She is revered, respected, loved, adulated. Some of you may remember when we had a farewell meeting a few weeks ago, each of the Flamingo directors were invited to suggest one word, one adjective to describe how they felt about Stephanie. And I think we received 88 suggestions. It was just an amazing tribute to Stephanie. She doesn't need a lot of introduction. She's a past trustee, a past director. She chaired the Strategic Planning Committee. She's been on so many committees. She's done so much for Rotary. I don't want to embarrass her by going over her bio, and I'd rather let her have the floor. So without further ado, it's my great pleasure and honor to invite Stephanie Urchick to give us some reflections on her term as a Rotary International Director. Stephanie, over to you.
Thank you, Peter. You didn't want to embarrass me, but look, I'm all red, so thank you for that intro. You know, the story of Stephanie as a Rotary International Director has a few twists and turns, like most of my life. So I just want to share some thoughts with you about how I got to where I was and what it meant to me. I think you all know that zones nominate people to be directors, and then clubs elect the members of the board, elect the directors every year at the International Convention. Well, guess what? None of you at all nominated me, and none of you or none of your clubs voted for me. Because back in 2017 and 18, I was a member of a different zone. My Rotary district then, District 7330, was part of Zone 29, and we were paired with Zone 28. So it was actually a nominating committee from Zones 28 and 29 that nominated me to be director. And then it was clubs that nominated and elected me at the International Convention. So a strange thing happened though in the course of events. Rotary, by its constitutional documents, is required every 8 years to take a look at the composition of the zones and figure out whether or not there needs to be some realignment to make sure that zones have balance. You don't want one zone to have 200,000 people and another zone to have 50,000. So they do what's called zone realignment. So in the course of that zone realignment, my district ended up coming into Zone 33. So the great news there is that it meant that in my first year as a director, I was paired with a fabulous Rotarian, past director David Stovall, and we had a great run. He is the lead director, just, you know, doing the business of Rotary. And then the pandemic hit and some things changed. But then I had the great fortune of being paired with Rotary International Director Peter Kyle for my second year. And again, we had a great run. We did some things differently than a typical year, but you know, the work and the magic of Rotary continued. Now, as directors, our overall job description says that basically what we do is establish policy for Rotary International. We're supposed to provide guidance that helps clubs and districts thrive and move forward. But we have a much more detailed job description that includes a lot of other things like program planning. We adopt the annual budget and provide financial oversight. We're supposed to promote Rotary ideals, and we're supposed to supervise and motivate officers and committees and districts and clubs. But the one piece of our job description that I absolutely love is the fact that we're supposed to visit districts in our respective zones so that we can further the ideals of Rotary and communicate regularly with governors and Rotarians in those districts. And for the first 6 months of my first year, I did a lot of that. I was rarely home. When I would stop home, my cat would look at me and say, "Who are you? I don't recognize you." I was always on the road, and it was so much fun. And I appreciate that I see so many of you on this call who were responsible for inviting me to come to your clubs and districts, and it was absolutely incredible. But as you all know, in March of 2020, the way we all do Rotary changed. We had no choice. We were faced with a twin crisis. We had the pandemic, and then we had this uncertain economic instability. What in the world was going on? But to its great credit, Rotary didn't miss a beat. I think you all know that in March of that year, I think it was on the 11th, our General Secretary, John Hugo, ordered everybody at Rotary International, including the international offices, to go home with their laptops and see if they could do the work of Rotary from home. And they tested it, and the next day it was business as usual. The only thing that was not able to be done was the actual physical mailing of Paul Harris medallions and pins, because those things were housed at Rotary headquarters in the basement in Evanston, and nobody could get into the building. But everything else went on as usual. At the zone level, one of the things that we're responsible for doing is, as directors, is to put on an institute, a summit, if you will, to help train leadership. Well, of course, had a wonderful opportunity to do that with David Stovall, but Peter and I were forced to look at doing something a little different. So we did have a summit under the fabulous leadership of Jeremy Hurst, who was our general chair, and we did it with the backdrop of Pittsburgh, which is a city that I was so looking forward to inviting all of you to come and see, because if you've never been there, if you haven't been there in years, it's such a different city now. We lost our industry, so all that pollution went away. So Pittsburgh now has high tech and medicine and research and education, a much different, very livable city. And I was so looking forward to having you all visit. But of course, we didn't do that. We went online, and we were an early adopter of online Rotary events. And with the capable wisdom of Jeremy and his direction, we put on one hell of an online event. When we tallied up all of the people who were on the call, all of those who were live streaming, all of those who went back and looked at it, we even had people who used parts of it for club programs. We had over 10,000 visits. Now that's public image. That's spreading the message of Rotary. So I'm very proud of the fact that Peter and I did put on a summit, even though it was a little bit different than what we had expected. Because we were not able to travel, that's the bad news. But the good news was that all Rotarians around the world figured out that we were at home. So guess what? They started emailing and calling and saying, "Can you do this? Can you be here? Can you Zoom with us? Can you go to me?" And of course, being the Rotarians that we are, it was really hard to say no. The only time I say no is if I say no problem. So I ended up doing a whole lot of Zoom calls. And the end result is at the end of this year, I tallied up all the different places I had visited virtually. And you know, I had been in 51 countries in my second year as director, 51. Now, if I had tried to do that in my role, and you know, without the pandemic, never would have happened. You know, I spoke to more Rotarians and got to engage with more Rotarians than I ever possibly could have if we would have stayed in our normal meeting routine. So that's been one of the bright spots of the pandemic. I always like to say that the darkest nights bring out the brightest stars. And that's what happened in the pandemic. You know, none of us knew what to expect. It was all new to us. You know, 18 months ago, if you would have said to me, Stephanie, set up a Zoom call, I would have said, what the heck are you talking about? But, you know, we all learned how to navigate and how to do it. Is it perfect? Of course not. But it helped us stay connected. And that's what the world was looking for. We wanted connection and we wanted to continue to serve. And Rotary clubs all over our zones did that. I am so proud of zones 33 and 34. I will put our two zones up against any other paired zone in the world because we had so much activity going on, so many things going. You know, in Georgia, district, I think 6,900, is that the district, David? Over 3 million meals served in that district alone.
6910, I'm sorry.
6910, thank you, David. Yeah, so, you know, we fed people and, you know, we connected people and we served people. There were Rotary clubs who were checking on the elderly and the people who couldn't get around. We did service, and that's what is so important about Rotary and the magic. So pandemic or not, you know, we did a lot of great things and we've learned a lot of lessons. For those of you who are free and able to join me on July the 21st, I'm doing a Zoom call that's billed as the largest Rotary Club meeting ever. If you'd like to register for that and hear more, I'm the speaker, I'm the program speaker for that Rotary Club meeting. And I'm going to talk more about the lessons that we've learned from the pandemic and what our future looks like in Rotary. If you'd like to register for that, it's going to be held the same time, 1 o'clock Eastern. And you can find the registration on our zone website. When you go to rizone3433.org, click on the tab that says events and scroll down to where it says largest Rotary Club ever. And it'll take you to a registration page. If your district uses DACDB, you can use that to register. If you don't use DACDB, or if you would like to invite someone else who maybe isn't in Rotary yet, you can use the guest registration. And that's going to be an international club meeting because we have clubs from India, Finland, Ukraine, Montana, Minnesota, Ohio, Pennsylvania, all over. So if you want to do something different, share that information with your club members and join me on July 21st for the largest Rotary Club meeting ever. So Director Peter, thank you for allowing me to share some thoughts about my year, and I will turn it back over to you.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. My goodness, what an extraordinary person you are. Zones 33 and 34, we won when you transferred from zone 39, our gain, their loss. You have been a remarkable director, just a wonderful person, and we love you, we respect you, we admire you. You are truly a role model of how a Rotary International director should serve. So thank you, Stephanie, for your inspiring reflections. We'll now move on to another exceptional lady. It's my pleasure to introduce Rotary International Director, Elizabeth Usovich. Elizabeth is a 23-year Rotarian and a past president of the Kansas City Plaza Rotary Club. She has an amazing CV, and I just wanted to read some of the highlights. She served as a trainer for Rotary International Assembly. She's been heavily involved in chairing institutes in Kentucky and Cincinnati, in Louisiana. She served as the Rotary Public Image Chair, Grants Chair. She was recognized at the White House in 2014 as a Rotary Woman of Action honoree and as a 2011-2012 recipient of the United States President's Volunteer Service Award. Her particular passion in Rotary has been supporting orphans and at-risk children in Malawi, Africa. And she has written 9 Rotary Foundation grants in support of Malawi's Children's Village and in helping Rotarians and clubs to develop and promote successful service projects. She led a vocational training team to Malawi as part of a Rotary Foundation grant in 2016. She's also been heavily involved as a Missouri RILA counselor. In her professional life, Elizabeth is a principal of her own consulting practice, Whitespace Consulting, which focuses on leadership development, sales coaching, business strategy, strategic planning, facilitation, and qualitative research. Prior to joining her firm, she had leadership roles in Deloitte's, Kellogg's, DST Systems, and at the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. She is fluent in Spanish and French and spent nearly 10 years working, living, and doing business in Europe, Asia, and Latin America. She is a frequent motivational speaker on service leadership, volunteer leadership, and business development. I could go on, but perhaps I've said enough. Elizabeth has been invited by President Shaker to lead the task force looking at empowering girls. And she's given a number of presentations already to many of the people on the call today. She's a great speaker, a great Rotarian, and it's my honor and privilege now to invite Elizabeth to address the call. Elizabeth, over to you.
Thank you very much, Peter, and thank you for welcoming me here today. And it's an honor and a privilege to be introduced by someone like Peter Kyle. I have tremendous respect for Peter, for David, for Stephanie, and I feel like I'm among friends here. I know some of you. In fact, Chuck Arneson was my aide when I was a president's rep to his district, and it's good to see you, Chuck. Hope the cows are doing well, and to see all of you. And Peter asked me to talk a little bit today about the Empowering Girls Initiative. Many of you are probably familiar with that initiative, but it is a new initiative, a presidential initiative of President Shekhar Mehta, along with Rotary Days of Service and the presidential conferences that will be held throughout the world in 2021, 2022, culminating with the presidential conference in Houston, which is accessible to all of us, which is terrific. Peter has been incredibly supportive of this initiative. He has a tremendous reach and network into organizations that are actively working on empowering girls. You have tremendous resources within your zones through the World Bank, through UNICEF, through other organizations that are actually located in your zone. So you have tremendous possibilities to have positive impact on the lives of girls. And I'll be very excited to see what, under Peter's leadership and with the ambassadors who are charged with supporting this program in your zones, seeing what they do throughout the coming year. Now, I'm going to give you a very brief overview. I will tell you that this initiative is new. There is no code of procedure. There is no playbook. There are guidelines. There are resources that have been identified, but implementing this initiative requires all of us to be resilient. All those things that Stephanie talked about that we learned during the pandemic, being resilient, being entrepreneurial, and figuring out ways to implement projects in our clubs and districts that are relevant and meaningful within the regions in which those projects are taking place. So whether you're doing it in your own community, partnering with a club elsewhere in the world, that's really essential, is to make sure that it's relevant. I am going to share my screen. Please be reassured that I am not going to make anyone suffer a death by PowerPoint. I have about 6 slides. They are primarily images, but I think it might make it a little bit easier to discuss this initiative. Oh, but the host has disabled my screen sharing. So perhaps if I can get a screen sharing ability, I can share my screen, but if not, let me know and I'll just talk through. Jeremy, are you the host or who is the host?
Doug Wolf is the host, and I think he's probably working on this right now. No pressure, Doug.
All right, and there's no other host. So, okay. All right, well, the initiative, as I said, is a presidential initiative. It is an initiative that Shekhar Mehta has had a long affiliation with. He has done tremendous work in India in support of girls. And so part of this initiative and the point of the initiative is really at the club level. This is not a corporate Rotary program. It is a club level initiative where the focus is on encouraging clubs, encouraging districts to identify projects that enhance the health, the well-being, the safety, the education of girls. And by girls, the primary focus is from birth to 18 years. I know in my zones, I had questions from some gentlemen that meant, does this mean empowering women? You know, because you call yourselves girls. And so we clarified that no, this means young girls between the ages of birth and 18 years. And so the focus of the initiative is for clubs to take on a project that enhances the lives of girls and has a measurable impact on the lives of girls, either in their communities or through a global project. Now that can be a new project, or it can be an existing project where the focus is shifted a little bit so that the perspective is through the lens of empowering girls. I'll give you a very simple example of that. Perhaps a club awards scholarships to high school graduates. A way to focus this, that kind of a club project on empowering girls would be to identify a girl from an economically disadvantaged community or from a socioeconomic group in the community who that has not had opportunities that other young girls have had, and make that part of the consideration in the selection of a scholarship recipient. For RILA, the same kind of criteria could apply. If a club supports a student to RILA, then empowering a girl through selecting one who might not have that opportunity for that kind of leadership would be an example of creating a project that's a little bit different from what the club has generally done. So that's the primary focus of the initiative. And as I said, it is up to a club to decide what's going to be the best kind of project to meet the needs either in their own community or in that global community where they might be doing a project. So the funding for an Empowering Girls initiative could come from multiple sources. In some cases, the project might be something that could be funded by a global grant. There may be a global grant already in progress that could be shifted a little bit to focus on empowering girls. It could come from a district block grant where a community project could be funded through district block grant funds. Or it could be entirely funded by a club's own fundraising or other resources. Or it may be completely a sweat equity kind of project that doesn't require funding. So the flexibility is very wide. It's very great. for engaging in these projects. And in terms of why, the why behind this, girls face great challenges across the world. In some areas of the world, it isn't even safe to get on a bicycle and bike to school. Some girls are attacked on the way to or from school. That is why many schools that we hear about that are developed for girls abroad are residential schools. It's because the risk is so great of just getting to school. We've all heard about washing school programs where sanitation and separate sanitary facilities are not available to girls, and they cannot, because of that, they are disinclined to stay in school. The pandemic has had a significant effect on girls. There's been an estimate by the World Bank that school has been disrupted for over 750 million. Yes, 750 million girls. It's significant. Trafficking in my zones, human trafficking is a focus for many of the governors who are actively participating in this initiative. And 20% of trafficking victims are girls under the age of 18. It's a significant issue. Child marriage, 12 million girls annually, some as young as 6 years old, are married against their will. So we have no shortage of issues that we can address with girls. Here in the United States, Peter and I have had conversations about this. Girls are not necessarily encouraged to study science, technology, engineering, and math, or STEM careers. That is a huge place where impact could be made. Coding camps could be part of this initiative. So again, the issues and the challenges that girls face are great, and so are the opportunities that we have to engage in this initiative. So how does it take place? Well, there are some resources that are being developed. There is a presidential initiative webpage that's being developed that will have several resources, including a PowerPoint, some of which you would have seen today, but I'll send you to that website when those resources are available so you can take a look at it. So there are those types of resources. The PowerPoint presentation, there is a brochure that includes a menu of potential opportunities for clubs to participate in the initiative. And again, the door is wide open. Whatever will enhance the lives and implement positive change in the lives of girls qualifies for this initiative. We are also encouraging clubs to list their projects on Rotary Showcase. And there is a specific campaign for empowering girls on Rotary Showcase. So our ability to measure this impact is also very key. Now you have 5 ambassadors who have been named in your zones, who are the supporters, they are motivators, they are connectors of information, they are communicators on what clubs are doing. I did have a slide with the names of those people, but I'll leave it to Peter to bring you up to speed on who they are. But their jobs are really to keep the momentum moving forward for this initiative. And there's great interest across the world from these ambassadors to make these initiatives very meaningful and put empowering girls on the map across the world as an area in which Rotary is taking the lead. So that's a very brief overview of the initiative. I'm happy to take questions, but if you wanted to start conversations about this within your clubs, within your districts, with the ambassadors, a couple of questions are, what really are the needs of girls here in zones 33 and 34? And what kinds of partnerships do we have that could enable us to engage in a project? So even just starting with those 2 questions would be a great point of departure. And July is a wonderful time to start thinking about how can we have a positive impact on the lives of girls across the world. So President-elect Shaker, or President Shaker, has said, the girls of the world are waiting for you. And with this initiative, it's my hope, and I know it's Peter's hope and the rest of the board's hope, that that wait is over and it's in our hands now to implement these projects. So thank you for your time. Clearly, I said I wasn't going to subject you to death by PowerPoint. So I was very brief with my slides, probably the most brief I've ever been with PowerPoint slides. And I appreciate the time, and I so appreciate the invitation to be with you today. Thank you.
Elizabeth, thank you. That was a phenomenal presentation and a great recovery from not having the slides. We will put the slides in the chat box, or we'll make them available. Just to let everybody know, the ambassadors so far, and we probably will need more ambassadors. We have Dawn Rochelle, we have Tina Fishlin, we have Cindy Dora, we have
Anna Patel.
Anna Patel, and Clarice. What's Clarice's first name? Gosh, this is terrible.
Clinice. Right?
That's
Clinice Platt.
Yeah,
Clinice Platt. So a phenomenal team of ambassadors. We do have a couple of minutes if there are any particular questions. Otherwise, I'll hand back to Jeremy.
Thanks so much, Peter, and thanks again, Elizabeth. Whilst we're waiting to see if there's any questions, in fact, there is one here from Andre Maria in District 6900. What's the cost of the initiative, Elizabeth?
I'm assuming, thank you for that question. Andre, I believe you're asking what is the cost to a club or a district? There is no cost to participate or identify a project. Now, if your project has expenses, then that's where either a club funds or perhaps a district block grant or district grants, or potentially a global grant would come into play. But there is no fund separate from the Rotary Foundation funds that exist already for projects. So I hope that clarifies the question, and thank you for it.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Great value. And Magda has asked, do you have an address where we can find ideas for projects, Elizabeth?
Well, that will be
web
on
address, I guess.
a web address. Yes, that presidential page, initiative page, is currently being developed. I understand that either later this week or very early next week, that will be available. And when it is, I have been assured that we'll be notified immediately. Peter and the ambassadors in your zones will be notified, and they will disseminate that information. So yeah, stay posted. It's coming. It's very close to being finished.
Thanks,
so thank
Elizabeth.
you again.
Thank you so much. And this really resonates with me in relation to the Caribbean region, Haiti in particular, where young girls are used to carry water, often 30, 40 minutes from their home to be able to get fresh water, clean water, to take it back to their homes by carrying 5-gallon containers on the process, exposing themselves to all sorts of dangers. So what a great initiative, and thanks for that. Okay, it's now over to me to give you some very brief highlights on from the Rotary Rotary International Board of Directors meeting for May, June, and July. From a club and district perspective, Rotary International reaffirmed its policy that no in-person Rotary meeting or event shall be mandatory for any participant who may feel uncomfortable attending because of the COVID-19 pandemic. They also made several changes regarding the present representatives program for district conferences, where requirements to serving as a representative, including increased training, will provide a better quality experience for the districts and the representatives themselves. Past RI director today Stephanie today talked about pivoting post-COVID, and RI has taken that lesson on board. They've considered several opportunities to adjust. By that I mean they've been reduced, I believe, their costs, and agreed that various committees would now meet only virtually, such as the Strategic Planning, Operations, Shaping Rotary's Future, the International Assembly, the Young Past District Governors Committee, and also to adjust the regional leader and assistant coordinator allocations by 10%, and that's compared to the representatives, special representatives to this budget, which will also be cut by 17%. Again, cost-saving opportunities by being able to go virtual, and many of the sessions that we're holding, just like the one we're doing now. Training planning meetings also for regional leaders will be virtual too. Now, the funds saved from this will obviously enable things such as happened this year. Rotary Foundation was given additional funding from Rotary International to fund grants in the savings we made, and it could apply, of course, in future to ensuring that to mitigating future increases in Rotary International dues. So hybrid meetings, virtual hybrid meetings should continue to be implemented wherever possible, and we're encouraging districts to appoint a COVID-19 advisor with a public health background for assistance in monitoring local guidance, and agreeing also that no personal travel should be approved in conjunction with Rotary funded travel through the 30th of September 2021. And also agreeing governors, elects and nominees may be reimbursed by their district government funding for Genettes and Gets. There's also a new commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion. A new commitment statement replaces the old one. I won't read that now, but we will circulate that later. It's very important that we understand the commitments Rotary is making to that and the implications on our clubs and districts. And we also recommended, the RA board recommended that the districts appoint an optional diversity, equity, inclusion district committee. It was announced that the Valerie Wafer would be the 2021-22 Rotary International Vice President, and Verpi Honkala as 2021-22 Rotary International Treasurer. And also agreed that the Assistant Rotary Foundation Coordinators, Assistant Rotary Coordinators, and Assistant Rotary Public Image Coordinators may be funded to travel per COVID-19 travel policy. So that's a brief summary, and if you have any questions on that, please let me know separately. We'd be happy to circulate those board summaries to you directly. Now over to you, Peter, to talk about the priorities for this coming year.
Thanks, Jeremy. As you can tell, the board's been busy. There are lots of issues, and because of Zoom, we met on a very regular basis, virtually every month, which was unusual. Moving forward, we hope to meet in person in October. And again, in conjunction with the Assembly in Orlando and the convention in Houston will be in-person meetings. Otherwise, I think the norm is going to be virtual meetings for quite some time. So President Shaker has identified 7 particular issues that he's concerned about and wants to promote. Just very briefly, one is DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and you've heard about that from Jeremy. The task force led by Vice President Valerie Wafer has made a tremendous progress. It's a very impressive team working with Valerie and with the staff, and you'll be hearing more about that on a regular basis over the next few months. Empowering girls, Elizabeth is leading that task force. What an impressive presentation today from Elizabeth. Very articulate, very compelling, very informative, all squashed into 10 minutes as I had asked. Amazing. Thank you, Elizabeth. And please follow up with any questions for Elizabeth or any of our ambassadors with questions. Regionalization, this is a topic that Shaker feels quite strongly about. What does that mean? How do we improve decentralization? How do we give more decision-making authority to regional officers? So that's something that's going to be on his agenda. Valuing our organization. Shaker is a chartered accountant by background. He likes numbers. He wants to know, what is the value of our organization? How do we value it? How do we value our time? How do we value our projects and so on? So a group is going to be focusing on that. Another area, improving our stature as a global organization. Shaker went online a few days ago, went to Google to identify the top 20 nonprofits, and he was dismayed to find that Rotary is not one of them. So he set up a group to improve Rotary's international stature. In fact, the Rotary Foundation does have a very high international stature through the Global Navigator. We have very high ratings every year, but he wants to see Rotary have a higher footprint on the international humanitarian community. So you'll hear more about that. He's concerned about the use of Rotary marks, how we can make greater use of the trademark and Rotary signs and so on. And finally, he wants to promote membership. This is a key priority, as it is for every president. Each one bring one. He wants to go from 1.2 to 1.3 billion, and he has some fairly good ideas as to how we might go about that. So there's lots on the international agenda. You'll be hearing more about it. We'll keep you informed every month, or every other month. We'll give you some highlights. If anybody has any questions or any suggestions that they would like the board to consider, I can't guarantee that we will be able to put them on the agenda, but we'd love to hear from you. The whole purpose of these calls is to give you more information about what's going on at the international level, and we'd love to get your feedback. So please reach out to Jeremy, reach out to myself anytime, and we'll do our best to respond and pursue your questions. So that's all I wanted to say about transformational issues. And now I'll pass back to Jeremy.
Thank you so much, Peter. Just a note that I did put the board highlights, the Word document in the chat there, so you should be able to download that from them. I apologize, we were a little tight on time, so I was talking faster than I even normally do, and I know that's not slow. So hopefully you'll be able to read them at your leisure. Well, the great news is we've set a record today. We have 154 of us on the call, so congratulations to everybody. What a great start to the new year. Our next meeting will be on Monday, August the 2nd at 1 p.m. And now, as is customary, please mute yourselves and join Peter and myself in reciting the four-way test. The four-way test of the things we think, say, or do.
Is it the truth? Is it
fair
fair
to all
concerned?
Will it
promote
goodwill and
Better friendships?
Will it be
beneficial to
all
all concerned?
concerned?
And
Is it fun?
Okay, guys. Thank you so much for participating. Have a wonderful afternoon and the rest of the day.